everyone. Thanks for joining us this week on the Extra Point Show.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Thanks for joining us. We're obviously going to cover the conference championship games here that were recently happened. But first, we have some other news in terms of probably the biggest news in the NFL right now. Former Miami head coach Brian Flores is suing the NFL and three of its teams, the Broncos, Dolphins, and Giants, alleging a pattern of racist hiring practices by the league and racial discrimination during the interview process with Denver and New York, as well as during his tenure with Miami.
Yeah. So obviously, huge accusations. I mean, there was a lawsuit that, I mean, definitely have tremendous ramifications on several fronts. Not only,
man's not coaching in the NFL again. I would say after this, most likely.
I mean, it'd be. I wouldn't anticipate so. Now, the one thing I will mention is, shockingly enough, he's actually still in consideration for two head coaching jobs with the Texans and who's the other one? The Texans and
I honestly don't know.
I want to say and the Saints. That's the other one. The Texans and the Saints.
I mean, I think he should still be able to be a head coach. It's not that I think that he shouldn't be. It's just
it's just a hell of a stance. And I mean,
it's a big thing to do, and it seems more likely that but although the NFL might take the stance, if we don't allow him to coach or have an opportunity to coach, that's going to look real bad on us as well. So it's kind of a coin toss there. You're not really sure, but
and I mean, what's interesting is this is on the tail end of this is the second former head coach to sue a team this year. Obviously, we reported earlier in the season on John Gruden suing the NFL. So now this is Brian Flores, obviously for a completely different reason, but they failed to make the playoffs at any point during his tenure. So what he is stating in his lawsuit is that the league's discriminated against Flores and other black coaches for racial reasons, denying them positions as head coaches, coordinators, and positional coaches, as well as general managers and front office personnel.
It's an interesting position to take to say that, though, considering he was the head coach for several years. I mean, it is an odd firing given his record, but to say like they discriminate, I mean, they did hire him. But so it just, I don't know. It just seems, it does seem that there is some kind of racial discrimination going on in the NFL in terms of that. But I mean, he was the head coach for several years. He did get the job. But
I mean, he definitely did.
And he also was quoted as saying it was time to stop being quiet about the injustices that are happening. He said over the phone to NFL Network's Cameron Wolfe, "This was long overdue. There's plenty of racism that needs to be exposed." And maybe that's the case. I mean, if it is, then I would agree. If they're they're just bringing somebody in just to give the image that they're going to consider that, just to check the box, then that's not right, man. You gotta base it on merit.
Not. I mean, there's a lot of talented, positional coach. There's a lot of talented coaches out there of every color. I think Robert Salah is like the only coach of like Middle Eastern descent in the NFL.
Is Ron Rivera the only Hispanic coach? I believe
only Hispanic head coach. The only other one I can think of, there was Tom Flores with the Raiders back in the day, but there haven't been a lot of Hispanic head coaches either. Obviously, right now with those firings, there's only one active, black head coach, and that is Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh.
Mike Tomlin, yes.
Then there's also, as we mentioned, Robert Salah in New York. He's a minority head coach. Ron in Washington, he's Hispanic, and then I want to say there's one other one, but I'm not thinking of it right now. Oh, Flores was also quoted as saying, "God has gifted me with a special talent to coach the game of football, but the change for need." Is that the quote that you said?
Oh no, I said the other one.
Okay. But the need for change is bigger than my personal goals. In making the decision to file this class action complaint today, I understand that I may be risking coaching the game that I love and that has done so much for my family and me. My sincere hope is that by standing up against systemic racism in the NFL, others will join me to ensure that positive change is made for generations to come. So, yeah, like we said, definitely a ballsy move. I do hope that Flores gets another opportunity because, I mean, he definitely seemed like he would be a good head coach. I mean, it seemed like he had a good thing going in Miami.
Definitely.
They didn't start out hot, but they won 7 straight games. I mean, how often do you remove your coach after after that kind of a winning streak. I obviously,
Right.
that 1-7 start killed their playoff chances, but they were in the playoff race until, maybe the last game of the season.
Mhm.
So the NFL, of course, came out with an early statement, as they do. The NFL and our clubs are deeply committed to ensuring equitable employment practices and continue to make progress in providing equitable opportunities throughout our organizations, the statement read. Diversity is core to everything we do, and there are few issues on which our clubs and our internal leadership team spend more time. We will defend against these claims, which are without merit. So, typical, NFL spokesperson.
True, true. I mean, this kind of thing is what makes me think that he probably won't coach again in the NFL because he's making some bold claims here, and even if the claims are true, the NFL is more than likely not going to want to sit there and admit to that. So
Right.
it doesn't. It's almost. I mean, it depends on how this lawsuit goes, but
Yeah.
that's why I don't expect him to coach again, just due to that. But I mean, if his claims are
If
with
they're
merit,
valid,
then
yeah. So I
yeah, if
mean,
they're valid,
and
then
some of what he's saying, because I think a lot of the stuff more racially based applies to. I don't know how much of the Miami stuff is, because we'll get into that. So his suit against the Dolphins, he's saying that it's typical for black coaches who are not given more latitude, as far as time to succeed. So he's saying that he wasn't given as much time as, maybe say a white coach in that position.
given his record and the way it's been since he's been the coach, that makes sense because you wouldn't expect him to be fired given the way that
Yeah.
he's his record the
He was
last
24 and
seasons.
25, one game under 500. So I mean,
Yeah, and it was the damn Dolphins. I mean,
yeah,
like, come on, give the man a break.
yeah.
That's
I mean,
pretty good.
you
Like,
look at what position they were in before with the previous coach, Adam Gase.
yeah, exactly. That just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when he says these things, it looks like that would be the case because you would see a coach like this with that record, and you'd be like, why would they fire him? Who do they think they're going to get that is going to do better? I mean, I'm curious to see who they hire.
Maybe they're trying to get Mike McDaniel. That's one thing we're going to mention. Former, current Niners offensive coordinator, Mike McDaniel. Also, Kellen Moore, the Cowboys offensive coordinator, had a second interview on Saturday, so he's getting strong consideration. So, but yeah. So as far as this goes, he's also saying in the suit that Miami Dolphins owner Stephen Ross told Brian Flores that he would pay him $100,000 for every loss during the coach's first season because he wanted the club to tank so that it could get the top pick in the 2020 draft, which would eventually go to Cincinnati and be used on quarterback Joe Burrow. Joe Shiesty, who's in the Super Bowl, and you
Joey Cool.
Yeah, and you can see why they wanted him. So the lawsuit also alleges that Ross then pressured Flores to a recruiting trip on a yacht to try to recruit a prominent free agent quarterback, which would have been Tom Brady, which was reported by Rappaport, which would have been in violation of the league's tampering policies. So Flores apparently refused, left the meeting, and he said that after that he was ostracized and ultimately fired. Maybe, wanting to recruit Tom Brady because of his prior New England connection. So Stephen Ross issued a statement Wednesday night and said, with regards to the allegations being made Wednesday night, with regards to the allegations being made by Brian Flores, I am a man of honor and integrity and cannot let them stand without responding. I take great personal exception to these malicious attacks, and the truth must be known. His allegations are false, malicious, and defamatory. We understand there are media reports stating that the NFL intends to investigate his claims, and we will cooperate fully. I welcome that investigation and am eager to defend my personal integrity and the integrity and values of the entire Miami Dolphins organization from the baseless, unfair, and disparaging claims. So, one thing interesting about that is after that happened and he came out with that claim, former Browns head coach, we've mentioned him on the show before, Hugh Jackson, said that during his tenure with the Browns, owner Jimmy Haslam did the same thing with him. And, I mean, Hugh Jackson was like, I think he won like 4 games in like 3 seasons with the Browns. So if that was the case and he was getting like $100,000 a loss, I mean, that man cashed out. I mean, like,
Yeah.
Yeah, because that team, didn't win many games at all. They had the NFL's first 0-16 season. So
So after he was fired by
yeah,
Miami, I find this interesting as well. Several teams requested to interview him
hmm
for their head coaching openings,
yeah,
and the lawsuit alleges that one of the teams, the New York Giants, which I'm not a huge fan of, which is
right,
probably known, engaged in a sham interview process with Flores for their vacancy.
yeah,
The suit also alleges that Patriots head coach Bill Belichick mistakenly
yeah.
disclosed to
Oh
Flores in a
man,
text message
Bill,
exchanged on
Bill fucked
January
up, dude. Oh my
24th,
God.
3 days before he was
He
set
texts
to
he
interview
texts
with
the
the
wrong
Giants.
Brian. Like, how many times has that happened to you? And you just text the wrong person. Like, I know I've done it. I'm guilty.
Oh man,
Like,
that's
and
ridiculous.
it's
So
yeah,
he texted him that they intended to hire the Bills offensive coordinator Brian Dable,
yeah. Like he essentially was like
who is white.
congratulating, Brian on the job. He's like,
Right.
congratulations, yeah. So wow.
Jesus.
And like they ended up like pretty much he got that text before he had even interviewed. And
Hmm.
Flores on an interview with Get Up, they asked him why he went and did the interview, and he's like, I wanted to put my best foot forward. Obviously, there's only you only get so many of these opportunities, so I
Hmm.
wanted to go and give my best opportunity. But yeah, and then they announced the hiring of Dable just 2 days after. So then the Giants, um, let's see. Um,
Oh, yeah, so he
okay,
went on to give an extensive interview for a
yeah,
job that he
yeah,
already knew he wouldn't get.
yeah. So that's what
So it was
that's
held
what his
for no reason
defense
other
said.
than the Giants to demonstrate falsely to the league commissioner Roger Goodell and the public at large that it was in compliance with the Rooney
Yeah,
Rule,
yeah.
which is what the suit alleges.
And the Rooney Rule, of course, which, of course, by rule, identifies the team must at least interview two minority candidates for head coaching, positional coaches, or front office positions within the GM, and that rule was instituted in 2003. So the Giants, of course, issued a statement saying that we're pleased and confident with the process, and that resulted in the hiring of Brian Dable. We interviewed an impressive and diverse group of candidates. The fact of the matter is Brian Flores was in the conversation to be our head coach until the 11th hour. Ultimately, we hired the individual we felt the most qualified to be our next head coach.
Oh, yeah, and of course that's what they're going to say.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, he does have Flores has another example with the Broncos in 2019, saying another sham interview occurred. That one alleges that the then general manager John Elway, CEO Joe Ellis, and others arrived an hour late to the interview and appeared
That's
disheveled, and
that's
it
a
was
bad
obvious
that's a
that they
bad
had been
look.
drinking heavily the night
That's a
before, and
bad
it's like,
look.
really, guys, really?
For a head coaching
Uh,
interview.
I know, like. So
And
the suit
well, and
alleges it was clear to the Broncos, or clear that the Broncos, I'm sorry, interviewed Flores just to fulfill the Rooney Rule, which I have to say, having that rule that exists, I mean, I get the reason it exists, and it's
yeah,
probably good it is, because if they're just going to sit there and ignore people based on race, then that isn't really right. But
right.
it kind of opens the door for this kind of
For
thing to
this, yeah,
happen, where people they're just going to bring
does.
them in just because they have to, and
Yeah.
it's like that's not. I don't know. It's like it's
Yeah,
uh,
I heard
weird.
somebody on a podcast once say that he had talked to an NFL like coordinator or an NFL position coach once who had said that like I'm gonna bring you in to interview for an offensive coordinator position that you're not gonna get, but it at
Mhm.
least gets your name in the conversation for offensive coordinator spots around the league. So it's like
Right.
wow, so they're like not even like outwardly in some cases denying this, but yeah,
I mean, that also could work in a way. I mean, that might help. That might help them out. I
it
mean, it is
might, it
actually kind
might,
of a point. Okay, well, you got interviewed, so maybe another. I mean, it's shitty. I'm not saying it's like a good thing,
right.
but like I guess maybe it could potentially help somebody.
Yeah.
But after this, with the Broncos, and they hired. I'm sorry, they hired Vic
Big
Fangio, who was
Fangio.
also white,
Yeah.
for the position, and then he was fired in January of this year.
After 3 seasons, yeah. So Vic's
Mhm.
out. And the
Yeah,
Broncos.
the allegations from Brian Flores directed towards the Denver Broncos, and this is a quote. Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, so this is the statement that the Broncos said. So they of course issued their statement too.
I see. Okay, I didn't see. Okay. So yeah, the allegations from Brian Flores directed toward the Denver Broncos in today's court filings are blatantly false, the Broncos said in a statement. Our interview with Mr. Flores regarding our head coaching position began promptly at the scheduled time of 7:30 a.m. on January 5th of 2019 in a Providence, Rhode Island hotel. There were 5 Broncos executives present for the interview, which lasted approximately 3.5 hours, the fully allotted time, and concluded shortly before 11 a.m. So, very different story than Brian Flores paints.
Right,
So
right,
it'll be
right.
interesting to see what the truth actually is.
Yeah.
Given this, I mean, because obviously something has to be true here. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then like we had mentioned that the Rooney Rule it's been in existence since 2003, but it was amended in 2020 to stipulate that they must interview now 2 candidates. It used to just be 1. Um, and the rule, of course, is named after Dan Rooney, former Pittsburgh Steelers chairman, and you know chairman of the league, or former Pittsburgh Steelers owner and the chairman of the league's diversity committee. And it was created in reaction to the 2002 firings of head coaches Tony Dungy, who of course was great in Tampa and Indianapolis, more notably with Peyton, and Denny Green, who was with the Vikings. And at the time, uh, Dungy had a winning record, and Green just had 1 losing season in 10 years. So obviously that kind of caused an uproar, and there was a U.S. Civil suit that involved attorneys Cyrus, Mary, and Johnny Cochran, of course, known as the one of the O.J. Simpson attorneys,
yeah,
who released a study showing that black head coaches, despite winning a higher percentage of games in the NFL, were less likely to get hired and more likely to be fired than their white counterparts. So former NFL players Kellen Winslow and John Wooten also put together an affinity group of minority scouts, coaches, and front office personnel to advocate for the rules creation as well. So I just wanted to finish up by mentioning that.
yeah. I mean, it seems like if discrimination was happening, and that's really not hard to imagine that it was, given the way things have been in this country in the past, and still aren't perfect. So it's not hard to imagine. And you would think, I would side on the side of Brian Flores. I think being what he says is probably more likely true than I don't really trust the NFL as a whole or Roger Goodell. So
Yeah. One thing I will say about Brian Flores overall is I've seen now obviously we've heard reports that he's like chewed the shit out of Tua and stuff. But I'm not saying that makes him a bad person. I mean, there's a lot of coaches that do that. Flores has always struck me as a super professional, super upstanding guy. So I don't take him as a liar. So it'll be interesting to see. We'll certainly continue to follow that situation, but
yeah, that will
interesting to
definitely be
see
interesting.
if he ends up coaching again. I mean, like we said, I mean, I'm hopeful that he'll get the opportunity, but we'll certainly see.
Yeah, definitely.
If you're not already, like, subscribe, and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and also check out the show every week on YouTube. And have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night, everybody.